Low content versus high content ghostwritten books. In this video, I'll be addressing what book types are the most profitable for you to begin to produce and publish nowadays. Over the years, I've published well over 300 high content ghostwritten books, and I've had a ton of failures. But luckily, a lot of the success overshadowed the failures. And I've experimented a lot with low content books. So one can say I've learned a few lessons along the way, and I'd like to share my unique perspective, and I think it'll be very valuable for you to learn some of the lessons that I've learned over the years. Now, before I get started in this video, be sure to hit the subscribe and notification button if you'd like to learn how to start and grow your own book publishing business from $0 to 6 figures a year, just like I was able to do. Then I'll be sharing more videos like these where I pull back the curtains and show you the inner workings of my business and show you exactly how I was able to scale my business to the 6 figure a year mark. So if you'd like more videos like these, if you'd like to learn more stuff like this, then be sure to hit that subscribe and notification bell. With that being said, let's jump on my computer and let's go through the content that I have for you today. So welcome to the inside of my computer. What we'll be discussing today, as I said in the beginning of the video, is low content, or also known as no content books versus high content ghostwritten books. And what we'll be specifically addressing in this video, or what I really want to get across to you, is what is the most profitable KDP books to produce and publish today, right? What's going to be the most efficient? What's going to give you the highest return on your investment and your time and everything else, right? So really, that's the point of the video today. So without further ado, let's get started. So let's first define the two types of books that I mentioned in the beginning of the video, right? The low content / no content books and the high content ghostwritten books, right? What are they and what type of books are these things that we're naming, right? So if we are to dive down a little bit deeper, right, and kind of put a micro view lens on it, low content / no content books can be defined as anything that could fall in the paradigm of notebooks, line books, journals, work logs, checklists, coloring. I tried to put as many ideas out there, even some that a lot of people haven't named, such as tattoo art ideas, coloring books, joke books, word games. These are all types of books that you can basically mass produce. You could do it in bulk. You could do it relatively quickly, right? You can actually pump these out in a few hours or sometimes in a day or 2 or 3. It doesn't take too much money upfront because you can use different resources. If you're familiar with Canva, canva.com, canva.com, that allows you kind of like a Photoshop to basically design and make different illustrations of images. And you can pretty much create these workbooks, these journals yourself for actually $0. A free Canva account, it starts off as free. You can then upgrade to a higher version. There's also another resource called BookBolt. That also allows you to basically design your own journals, your work logs, logbooks. You can do a bunch of stuff there, and I'll be sure to leave those resources in the description area of this video down below. But you kind of get the idea here. These aren't very expensive. These aren't very in-depth books. They're just things to basically that you can create. They're very simple, they're very straightforward, and there isn't too much of a hard sell to get a potential customer to purchase, right? So you kind of get the idea there. I don't really need to dive any deeper than that. I think that kind of draws the point home. Now, when we're talking about high content / ghostwritten, or not slash, in parentheses, ghostwritten books, and it doesn't really need to be ghostwritten. Ghostwritten just means that you're hiring a writer to write the book for you, and basically you will claim all the rights of that book, including all future royalties. You own the license, they own nothing. They just got money to write that book, a one-time payment, and that's pretty much it, right? Now, it doesn't have to be ghostwritten. You don't have to contract it. In fact, you can write it yourself if you think that you have the skill set and the resources to do so. Go ahead and do it. I actually encourage it. But then at the same time, you don't want to waste weeks and weeks of your time or months to create one book, right?
If you have to ghostwrite it, and pay for it, get that done. If you can do it yourself, get that done. If you can do it in a relatively quick way, right? Now, if we are to put a micro lens view to high content ghostwritten books or high content books in general, what are they? Really, they can be defined as how-to books, right? And you're welcome. I even shared a sub niche, a niche that you probably never heard of, but those are the kind of niches that you should be out there looking for. Topics of books you should be out there looking for. And this one I share with you is Bavarian crochet stitching, which is a type of knitting which I found through doing proper keyword research, right? I just as a side note, I wouldn't jump into into this niche because most likely a lot of people are going to be viewing this video and the topic's probably already going to be saturated, right? But I'm just giving you an idea of the kinds of niches that you should be going into. So you're welcome for that one. But these are the how-to books. So basically it shows you a how-to of a problem, of a pain point, of something that you want to get done. It shows you how to get it done. And one familiar brand that's out there that you've most probably heard about is the books for dummies, right? In reality, if you break that down, their business model is just creating how-to books, and they just slap their branding on it, which is for dummies, right? Which basically means it's a beginner's book. So that's kind of one of the top brands out there when it comes to how-to books, publishing brands out there. Now, high content books can also be defined as fiction / fantasy stories, right? Romance novels, nonfiction stories. It could be based off a real life, I don't know, I'm just thinking about like a detective story that, it could be something like that as well. It could also be history books. It could be a multitude of things. However, most people, when they think of high content books, they instantly think of the how-to type books, right? But it could be defined as many more things. As long as a high quality produced book, you can pretty much consider it a high content book. In fact, even a low content, uh, journal or workout book, if you put enough effort into it, I mean, not just putting lines and whatnot, if you put enough substance in the content, it can end up being a high content book as well. But I'm not gonna do the crossover right now. The point of this slide is just to define the two. All right. So let's go a little bit further. Let's show you some examples. So I have some examples for you for the low content. So let's go ahead and click on that one. So what I have for you here is a workout log book, right? And you can see this book doesn't have too many pages, 126 pages right over here. And if you click on it, it didn't take too much effort to do this cover, let me tell you right now. Just black with a headline of workout logbook. And if we are to basically scroll down and get a sample of it, you can see it's pretty much just a template, right? So the person designed it on some kind of photo editing software, such as what I named earlier, Canva, could be BookBolt, could be on Photoshop, could be on a multitude of things, right? And what they're basically doing is they create this one-page template and they're just copy and pasting it, right? If I'm not mistaken here, copy and paste, copy and paste, copy and paste. So that is pretty much it. This is what kind of defines a low content book. Now, a no content book actually has no content at all. It could be basically as simple as having lines. It could be as simple as having, very little content inside the book. So they're really much easier to produce. This one takes a little bit more effort, but as you can see, if you dedicate a few focused hours, you can produce this relatively quickly. And even when it comes to the cover, you can even create this on those same softwares I was telling you about: Canva, Photoshop, BookBolt. I'll put all those links in the description so you can check them out if you want to. Canva, you can start for absolutely for free. So that's low content. Let's go ahead and check out the other one, which is high content. So like I said, don't dive into this niche. If you do, I mean, good luck to you. It doesn't mean that you automatically fail, but just because I'm exposing it out there, I'm putting it out there, doesn't mean everyone's going to jump on it, but at the same time, you have an increased competition, right? With that being said, you can see here that this is an actual high content book because we're not only a how-to book, but you can see now, granted, it only has 50 pages, which I would have put a little bit more substance in it. So I would have put at least 100 to 150 pages, at least 150 to 100, 130 to 150 pages. So that's at least 20,000 to 30,000 words. But, you know, regardless, it is considered a high content book. So what it is pretty much a book, just like one of those examples I was sharing with you of those uh, dummies book, right? How to for dummies. It's a beginners. It shows you 11 popular and easy to make crochet patterns, which is pretty much a stitching pattern, if I'm not mistaken. And I'm not sure if there's going to be any images, but from what I can see from the sample, there aren't any, most probably because they don't want to give it away in the sample, but there probably is a few pictures. But you can see they pretty much did this book. It looks pretty good in terms of the reviews, but this would be considered a high content book. So let's go ahead, go back onto the slides. So those are the two types of books. Now, what I've been seeing from a lot of the comments and different videos and online just in general is that there's a lot of confusion, right? A lot of people don't know where to start or what type of books to produce and publish out there, right? Everyone's trying to figure out what can be the most profitable for them. And just here's just a few quotes that I pulled from the internet, right? This person right over here, this anonymous commentator, the amount of work that must go into it, which basically they were talking about low content type books. Now it makes more sense to go high content. All right, so that's one idea. I spent thousands publishing high quality books and it didn't work. Low content is lower risk and is the way to go. And just one last one. Low content books didn't work for me. However, I have just one high quality book and it makes profit consistently. All right. So different ideas. One person saying low content, that's the way to go. One person is saying high content, that's more profitable, it's more consistent, it's more long-term, etc. Right? So different ideas, two different opposite views of the spectrum completely, right? So what is the right thing for you? And in order for us to determine that, you really have to look at the pros and cons of each type of books. So let's go ahead and address low content, no content books. So it's gaining a lot of popularity, right? So because there's no barriers of entry, you don't need a lot of money upfront, just like I was telling you earlier. You can use a simple software like Canva. You can use a simple software like any photo editing software. You can use a cheap software like BookBolt. And it's super trendy right now because of this reason. It doesn't cost a lot of money to get started. In fact, you can start for $0 and get a few dozen, if not a few hundred books created. So this is a danger, right? Whenever there's no barriers of entry, whenever there is no walls to protect the castle, you know, you are more susceptible to be attacked or have more competitors in your environment, right? So like I said earlier, it's much easier to get ripped off. It's much more easier to get attacked by your enemies because anybody and everyone can compete, right? It doesn't take too much. So that is a con. So there's a point of diminishing returns. And what I mean from with that is that it's more challenging to scale and it's hard to manage quality because the thing is, once you have a few dozen, if not a few hundred low content books, if you're really mass producing this thing, it's going to be really hard to manage a big portfolio of books. I mean, it takes a lot of resources and it takes a lot of your time. It's not as simple as producing just a few of them and you can expect to make a lot of money. It can happen. I'm not saying it won't happen, but the chances are you're going to have to do a lot of volume before you start making some significant amounts of money, right? So if you have a lot of product, a lot of SKUs, a lot of ISBNs out there, it's going to be much harder for you to manage and pump out really good quality. So it's time consuming, right? If not outsource. So outsource just means if you're not getting someone to do it for you, it can be very time consuming. If you're going ahead and editing the photos, making these these workbooks and whatnot. Whoops, let me just go back. So it doesn't work in all book formats, mind you, right? A lot of people you know, especially in my case, I've seen a lot of the success come from paperback formats, not necessarily ebooks. In certain cases, they won't even let you publish in an ebook format, and an audio format. Almost chances are it's just not going to work, right? Just because of the way that low content, no content books are, you cannot produce it in an audio format. So you're losing on those key formats, which are assets. So it won't work as an audiobook, and it could be difficult to, let me just go ahead and move myself here. It could be difficult to sell as an ebook and difficult to make a brand connection with a buyer. So again, because it's such a low, you know, easy to produce, it doesn't really, it's very hard to create a connection with the buyer. And what that really means is that when you make a connection with the buyer, you have more chances of that buyer doing a repeat purchase with you, because now they trust you, they have more confidence in the type of books that you have, and you can end up doing back-end sales. I won't go into that in this video. However, you have more chances of making back-end profits. But with low content, no content books, it's much harder to do that. It's not impossible, but it's much harder to do that because it's much harder to create that brand connection, just because the amount of content inside, it's really hard to establish some kind of confidence and trust with that person besides the actual purchase, right? So let's just move back here. Let's just click here. So the pro at the same time is that there's no barriers to entry, right? You don't need money up front. You don't need that much resources to get started. So that's a pro, and that's really the reason why it's so hot and trendy right now. So the only thing that you'll need is your time. So sweat equity only required. And even if you didn't have time, you can even outsource this, like I was saying earlier. Very simple and straightforward to get started. You saw one of the examples I shared with you with the workout logbook. It's not very complicated, right? You can pretty much see it and replicate it. And that's also the problem with it, right? Little to no risk. So no out-of-pocket expense if the book doesn't produce any sales. So you're not going to be out about a few hundred dollars if the book doesn't make any money. So that's always a good thing, right? And you can mass produce it in bulk. You can pump them out relatively quickly because it just doesn't take that much time to produce. Easy to systemize. Like I said earlier, you can pretty much task a person, outsource a person, contract it to someone, and they can, as long as you give them a set of parameters, a set of templates, or a set of, you know, ideas that you're looking to get accomplished, then you could pretty much you know, outsource it and have someone do it for you, do the entire work for you pretty much. And the nice thing about low content, no content books is that they are good gift items. It's really good to basically, during seasonal or holidays, right? A lot of people buy those books as a gift. They give a workout logbook, just like the one I showed you, as a gift to their best friend, to their you know, sister, brother, whichever the case may be. They're good gift items. Not so much the case when it comes to how to, but it could be as well, right? Depending which topic and which niche, sub-niche you're in. But typically, low content, no content books do better in seasonal and holiday, so you get the benefit of that spike of sales. Great gift items, like I was saying earlier. Now, when it comes to high content, ghostwritten books, here's some of the pros. So wider margins, you can charge a lot more money, so you make more profit per book sold because, you know, it takes a lot more to create. There's usually more pages. Pages is not really reflective of price. However, people assume a book that has a content that solves a problem, they assume they should pay a good enough amount of money to solve that problem, right? So you can charge more. Higher potential to scale. So you don't need that many books to basically start making a lot of money, right? As long as you do your proper research, as long as you create a valuable book that solves a painful problem in the marketplace, then you can pretty much scale that book to the moon. It's harder to commoditize and copy. This is pretty much the opposite of low content. It's not the easiest thing to replicate a book, especially if it's a good, valuable, and well-researched book that really addresses an angle of the market where other competitors haven't tackled and really solves that pain, that painful pain that the market needs, right? So it's much harder if you've done your research for competitors, which, you know, competitors are notorious, you know, copycats, they're notorious to be lazy. So that's an advantage. If you're not lazy, if you're willing to do the work, to do good research, then you can create a product that's hard to replicate. Branding capabilities. So like I was saying earlier about, you know, you can make that brand connection. You can focus on creating a really high quality book that provides a lot of value, that makes a connection with the buyer. And then you have a potential of making repeat sales, back-end sales, and you can have pretty much a customer for life if you collect their email address, etc. I won't go into the details in this video, but you do have a lot more, a bigger asset in your playbook now. Better opportunity for back-end sales, like I was saying earlier, ability to create a series of books. So you can make one book that complements the other book. So if you have a how-to book about one particular niche, so let's say Bavarian crochet, then you can make another book about another stitching style, which you can cross-promote to the other book, right? So a lot of people, once they see value in that first book, they'll go ahead and buy the second book, because now they know they trust you and they have confidence that you are creating high quality products. So like I was saying earlier, complement each other. Now, some of the cons, right? You need capital to get started when it comes to high content ghostwritten books. And what I always recommend is that you need to have at least 1,000 to 3,000 of a budget set aside to invest in producing these books. Now, of course, you can have a lot less. In fact, I started, as I said in many videos in the past, I started with only $150 that I put on a credit card. However, that if I would have started with 1,000 to 3,000 set aside, then I would have basically achieved success much quicker. Because the thing is, you can't just start with one book. You got to at least have a handful to basically pool your risk and make sure that at least 1, 2, or 3, or all of them are profitable. But chances are a few of them will be duds, and you just have to pool your risk, right? So you need to have a budget set aside, and that's something a lot of people don't talk about, but it's the truth. You do need a budget to get into this in this subset of producing these types of books, right? So it takes a lot of time and focus to research. Now, mind you, it takes just as much time to pump out a large volume of low content books that as it does to research a good high content ghostwritten book, right? So it might take a few hours, it might take a few days, it might even take a week. But if you do your proper research and you find a topic and you find an angle of the market that solves a pain point that's ideal, and there's not too many competitors, then you could really dominate. So I see this as a con, and I also see it as a pro, but I went ahead and put it as a con because I know a lot of you don't have that much time on your hands, right? So it's difficult finding topics and sub niches to target. I won't lie to you, but it's definitely doable. It's more difficult to recoup your investment. Again, you're going to be out of pocket a few hundred, a few $1,000s, and it might take a few months to recoup that money. However, the goal is to do, you know, a really good job doing your research, and basically you'll be able to recoup your money in a quicker amount of time if you produce really good, high quality books, right? It may take several months to break even, risk losing hundreds of dollars if book sales perform poorly, right? So those are all risks that you have to consider, especially if you're on a tight budget. Harder to build momentum. Again, it takes at least 60 days for Amazon to pay you, right? And if you're out of pocket a few $1,000s, then you're going to be waiting at least 60 days to recoup that money. So a lot of times, a lot of people don't have that much tenacity, unfortunately. And what ends up happening is that because they don't see the money in their bank account, they start to lose motivation, they start to lose focus, and it's harder for them to build that momentum. While with low content books, of course, you're still being paid after 60 days. However, you know, you're starting to see, because you're pumping out so many books, you start seeing profits and cash flow sooner, right? And it's a lot harder to create a high content book and promote it and market it, because it needs reviews, it needs to be out there and well marketed for it to compete. Versus low content, you don't need that much, right? You don't need that much effort to sell it, because it's a low ticket. People understand it the minute they see it. They don't need to be really sold on it, right? So let me just move myself. could take, pretty much just repeating myself here, need strong tenacity in order for you to continue and to keep pushing. So pretty much boiled down, what that means is the following here, right? Low content, no content books is lower risk, but also lower reward. High content, ghost written books are higher risk, but they are also higher reward. So really keep this in the back of your mind when you consider what strategy you want to use. And what I will say is that there is no perfect strategy, right? It really depends on you. So with that being said, I want to share with you an idea that basically sold me on the idea of why I should be creating high content ghostwritten books. Now, mind you, my goal here isn't to give you a bias of what I believe is best for you, but it's really to share my perspective and ultimately steer you in the right direction for what's best for you. So with that being said, just know that the next 2 or 3 slides is me sharing my perspective of why I decided to really double down on high content books versus low content books. But then I'll really tell you what I believe you should do in your particular shoes. All right. So just keep that in mind. So what really helped me make the decision of starting high content books, or really producing and publishing those types of books, is an idea that I read in a book. And basically what that idea is don't quote me on which book that was, but basically it said, when you come to start your company, who do you want to be? Do you want to be like you see on the left side here, which is actually a Toyota factory plant, which I believe here it says manufacturing in Canada. So it's probably one of the factories in Canada of Toyota. And you can see they're celebrating their 5 millionth vehicle produced. Now, that kind of makes me think a lot of low content, no content books, right? And Toyota's model is to pump out as much product, so as many cars as humanly possible for a very affordable price. In fact, their average profit per car sold is only $2,500 per car sold, right? So what kind of company do you want to start? Do you want to be Toyota, or do you want to be the Ferrari, which I kind of relate to high content books, right? Ferrari charges a lot more money per car sold. However, they don't need to sell that many cars because on average, every car sold makes them $80,000 profit, right? So that's almost 32 times more profit per car than Toyota. Now, everybody knows that not everyone can afford a Ferrari. However, you have a choice when you start your own company, your own book publishing business, to select the kind of customers that you want and build the kind of company that you want. To start Toyota, right, it takes a lot of resources, a lot of staff, and it's much more riskier to operate on lesser margins. When you operate, it's much easier, mind you, to start a Ferrari factory because you don't need that many workers, you don't need that much resources to produce very few cars, right? So keep this idea in mind. With high content books, you can charge more, you can build a brand that's very high quality. You can really take care of the books and produce the kind of books that really influence people's lives, that really solve a pain point. Not saying that Toyota doesn't do that, right? Toyota does a very good job, not hating on any brands out there. However, you can't, when you're pumping out that many books, especially low content, no content books, it's much harder to focus on quality, especially when you're mass producing. So keep that in the back of your head. This is just, like I said earlier, a point that I made earlier on when I started my book publishing business, that I wanted to focus on very high quality and basically charging a higher price, making more profits per book sold. And here's basically an illustration of that, right? Now, mind you, like I said earlier, not all books that you publish will be extremely profitable, wild success stories. They'll go viral. Of course, that's not the case. Like I said, you always have to pool your risk. Not all books that you publish will be successful. However, as long as the successful overshadow the losses, you'll do very well in this business. And you can see here just 4 books, right? Some of the top books that we have that I have in my portfolio, right? We've sold, in its lifetime, 4,068 units sold. Again, mind you, 4 books, right? They've made close to $25,000 in revenue. Now, I'm not showing you this to brag. I'm not showing you this to boast. I'm just trying to illustrate my point, which is, focusing on less products, focusing on higher quality, focusing on really solving a buyer pain is the way that I chose to go. That doesn't mean that's what you should do. That's just what I focused on doing. Now, like I said, those points were just not to give you a bias, but to share my perspective. If I was to go back in time, I would even double down on producing even higher quality books and a lot less books. And I would take a lot more time researching the book topics. Now, you're not in my shoes. We're two different people. You have to make a decision of where you want to, what you want to produce, what you want to publish, what kind of brand you want to have, right? So what should you publish? So really the next slide is really for you to identify where you currently are and to really identify the kind of books that you should be producing and publishing. So it really depends on your scenario. So let me go ahead and make myself smaller here because I seem to be too big to and blocking the slide. So really it depends on you. And when I made this slide, I asked myself when I just got started, what made me go with high content, right? Besides the point that I had read that idea from a book, right? But really, I was in a position where I was working a job, I had capital, even though I put the amount of $150 on a credit card, I did have capital. And even if I lost all my money, I was still living at home back then. I didn't have that many responsibilities. So in reality, I really had nothing to lose, right? So I could take massive amounts of risks. So basically, I was that person that's in the top left-hand corner. So I was working a job plus I had capital. So I was willing to take medium to high risk, which is what I did and which I recommend to go high content. If you're in this position, you're working a job, you have capital, then you can afford to take medium to high risk. Now, again, I don't know what your expenses are. I don't know how expensive your mortgage is. I don't know how many kids you know what I mean? So it really depends. But I would suggest if you do have some capital, you are working a job and you have some cash flow, some income coming in, I would suggest going with the high content route. Now, if you are working a job and you don't have a lot of capital, then you really want to go with a lower risk. So what that means is I would go low content, right? So that's in that case there. Now, if you are not working a job, but you do have capital, right? You do have money. So maybe you exited from a company, maybe you got some kind of package from a job that they had to let you go, whatever the case may be, right? Then I would do a mix of both. I would basically focus my time on doing high content, researching and producing those books. And I would also do low content, maybe outsourcing the low content work to a contractor for them to focus on that so you can make short-term, quick cash flow. And then you also focus on the long-term, high content books, right? Not to say that the low content won't be long-term, but I would just focus on a combination of both because you have more time on your hands and you also have capital. So that's a really good position to be in. Now, in the bottom left-hand corner, where you don't have a job and you have no capital, then you have to go with the lowest risk, right? I would suggest you go with low content. And ultimately, the goal here is to reach $1,000 to $3,000 a month as a first milestone goal before scaling to the six-figure a year run rate, which is 8,333.33 cents a month. The reason why you need to hit $1,000 to $3,000 a month is because now you're getting a income that you can reinvest. And in publishing, having an income of 1,000 to 3,000, right, means that you can pump out quite a few books. You have more leverage now, you have more income to play with, and you can quickly scale to the next milestone, which is the six-figure a year run rate. Now, mind you, everything I'm showing you here doesn't take into consideration your time. Well, it does somewhat, and it doesn't take into consideration, well, like I said, it somewhat does, your risk level, your risk tolerance. I cannot illustrate every single person's scenario because each person is different. You could be a person that doesn't have any money and it doesn't work, doesn't have any income, but you're very high risk. You have a very high risk tolerance, right? You're willing to take a lot of risk, and you don't mind putting $1,000 on your credit card or $2,000 on your credit card. because you live at home, right? I don't know. I can't play out that scenario. I wouldn't recommend it. I would still recommend you go low risk, low content. But at the end of the day, you will have to make a decision for yourself of how you want to bootstrap or start up your book publishing business and how you plan on scaling, right? But this is a really good illustration of what I think, what I recommend you would do. Again, I was in a particular spot and I picked a particular, I made a particular decision, and I don't regret it whatsoever. I think I did the right decision because at the end of the day, I am where I am now. However, with your particular scenario, it will really depend on your time, on your risk tolerance, and it really depends on multitude of factors. The last thing I'll just address on this slide is that you will need time to focus on your business regardless. Whether you go on low content route or you go on the high content route, you will need to dedicate time into your business. I won't start basically estimating how much time one's going to take and how much time the other one's going to take, because at the end of the day, you will need to dedicate time into your business. If you watch some of the previous videos I posted, I shared with you how I was working 9 to 5 job and I was sleeping till 1 a.m. every single day because I was focusing my time on producing those high content books, creating a team, doing the research, making sure that the books were extremely valuable. I was putting in the time. Now, if you go the low content route, you'll also have to put time into it, right? So it doesn't really matter. So I really wanted to make this video as valuable as possible and try to help you as best as possible. So I just want to leave you with these 2 bonus slides, which I think are really going to help you make a decision and maybe create some ideas in your head of what you want to do next, right? And basically, I just want to start this off by sharing with you a quote, which I tried to find who created this quote, and I've quoted it a million times, but I have no idea. I couldn't find the source of it. So let's just say unknown quote. But basically, it's a principle that says sometimes you got to go zig when everyone else is zagging. So what that means is you pretty much have to do the opposite of what the masses are doing or what everyone else is doing. Now, we can already agree that a lot of people are going into low content, and Kindle publishing and book publishing in general, publishing online is gaining a lot of popularity. However, a lot of people are not, everyone is going pretty much zig, right? They're all going in that one direction. So your job to really make the kind of money that you want to make, and that kind of goes hand in hand with what those people were saying, that some of them were having some success with low content, some people were having some success with high content, and there's a lot of confusion, right? This quote really summarizes it, because oftentimes that those low content books that they produce, pretty much maybe without them knowing, they were zagging, they were going at a different angle. I'll clear this up in just 1 second. And it could be because they differentiated themselves, right? Or with that high content book, maybe they were zagging when everyone else was zigging in that particular sub niche, right? This will make sense in the next slide, but this is a philosophy that you really have to adopt. When you see everyone going in a particular direction, most of the time you should take the other direction. You should be zagging when everyone is zigging, and then when everyone is zigging, you should be zagging. And it's always doing the opposite, right? And this is a really good business principle to take to differentiate yourself in the marketplace. So without further ado, here's what I really wanted to share with you to make this presentation, make this video as valuable as possible. So what I did is I sat down and I thought about what made the most profitable books that I've produced out of the 300 plus books that we've created here. What made the ones that were the top producers so successful, right? And it pretty much boils down to these points here. Obviously, I probably have a lot more points, but these are the ones that I could come up with on the spot. And really, it's the reason they were successful is that I took an approach and I took advantage of an opportunity in the marketplace. So these are opportunities in the marketplace that you too can take advantage of today, right? The first one being, and mind you, I did sometimes a combination of some of these together. They don't have to be isolated on their own. You can even cross them over to make your own zagging angle as a strategy, right? So starting with translated books, right? A lot of the success that we've had with the top producing books are not even in English, right? They're in other languages, international languages. So you could do the same for yourself. Oftentimes, a lot of people, when they're doing their research, their book topic research, their keyword research, they are only looking at it in one language, because unfortunately, a lot of people teaching this kind of stuff only speak English, right? And they don't speak any other languages, and they don't even tap into the other marketplaces. And Amazon, as I said in the other videos, is growing phenomenally in the other markets, right? International markets. So this is your opportunity to early on take advantage and produce some very high quality books, whether it's low content, book journals, workbooks, translate them, right? Do your research in those other languages. So we're talking about French, we're talking about Spanish, we're talking about German, Dutch, whichever, Italian language. Do your research and create those books in foreign languages. A lot of times people are only looking at those workout books in English, but what about in the other languages, right? Now, the other thing that you can use on its own or combine it with the first point, which is translated books, is that you really want to tackle sub niches, especially when it comes to low content. But the same thing goes for high content. In fact, I should have put high content here as well. So scratch off that low content word. That should have been sub niches for all books, right? It's really hard to compete in the big niches, right? Which is usually health, wealth, and self-help. Those are some of the biggest niches. However, when you go into the sub niches, which is another video I have to create, but this is where you can have a lot more success. And one example I could share with you is, instead of just making a typical, organizer slash planner, a lot of times if you pick a sub niche, which is, for example, a teacher planner slash organizer or an organizer, right? You're gonna have a lot more success, because now it's niche specific. A lot of people that are teachers are gonna be going ahead and searching for those keywords, and you could dominate those sub niches, right? And you can make a lot of money doing it. A lot of times people forget how big Amazon is. You only really need to have 0.0001% of a search volume for a particular keyword, and you're gonna make a lot of money, right? That's horrible statistics right there. Don't quote me on that. My math sucks. The other strategy that I've incorporated is something I call, quote unquote, hijacking competitors, right? And it's really hijacking competitors' success. And what that means is that you identify a competitor, right? And you basically take a different angle of your top competitors' successful books. So let's just say for a given sub niche or niche, not really sure, I didn't do too much research in this particular keyword slash topic, but a competitor could have a book about, do-it-yourself hydroponic book, right? Now you can do your research, maybe read some of the negative comments, maybe do some research on the internet, go on Reddit, go on YouTube, read some comments, and you can find that a lot of people were talking about how unaffordable hydroponics is, right? And it could be that that competitor doesn't even talk about that subject whatsoever, and you've identified it pretty much as a weakness of your competitor that you can take advantage of. And you can go ahead and produce a book that's going to go ahead and compete side by side with your competitor that pretty much has in the title affordable, right? You are taking the angle of affordable do-it-yourself hydroponics, because you'll be using different materials, you'll be using a different strategy, and it's going to help a lot with the pain point of that marketplace. So a lot of times, if you just position yourself against your competitors using a different angle, it doesn't even matter if they are featured on the top magazines, if they're got 1,000 reviews. If you take an angle that solves a pain point in the marketplace, you can absolutely dominate with very little to no reviews. Of course, you'll need reviews, but you don't need that much reviews when you have such a good angle that solves a very good pain point in the marketplace. Again, you can combine this with the translated book strategy. You can combine it with other strategies like the sub-niche strategy. You can basically mix and match all of these. Now, the last point is to create high quality, low content books, which I'm hearing more and more people talk about, which is not usually a good thing. So that's typically not the time to zig or zigzag, whichever, you know what I mean. So basically focusing on creating very high quality, low content books. So when you're creating that journal or when you're creating that workout book, you really have to go above and beyond. Maybe put some quotes. Maybe don't just put the amount of reps and sets if you're creating a workout book. Maybe going above and beyond and maybe incorporating nutrition logs, maybe incorporating the top foods that you should be eating and including their calorie amount. You really have to think outside the box, because this is how you're going to differentiate yourself. And this is in the eyes of the customer, how they're going to make their buying decision by seeing that you're providing more value and you're solving that buyer pain of theirs, and they're going to go ahead and make the purchase with you. Now, again, if you combine this with the other strategies I talked about, these are all opportunities for you to grow your publishing business, grow your company, and make the kind of money that you want to make for yourself and your family, right? So with that being said, I hope you enjoyed this video. Stay tuned, and I'll be doing a lot more videos like these. Like I said, I'm going to be pulling back the curtains of my business, showing you the inner workings of how I scaled my business to the 6-figure-a-year mark. Be sure to hit that subscribe button if you like this kind of content, and that notification bell. That way you can be alerted of some of the videos that are going to be coming up in the future. And be sure to check out the description box. We'll have a few links that might help you. And yeah, I hope you like this video. So take it easy, and I'll talk to you very, very soon. Bye for now.